Eleanor Thorne had a 22-year marriage built on success trust and a $50 million fortune. She and her husband Marcus were the envy of their Greenwich, Connecticut circle, a power couple with a flawless life. But for 11 of those years, Marcus was a ghost living a complete parallel life with a second family in a city just 2 hours away. When Elena filed for divorce, Marcus expected a simple 50-50 split, perhaps 60-40 in his favor. He didn't know his wife wasn't just grieving, she was investigating, and the revenge she planned for the final asset mediation wasn't just about money. It was a cold, calculated annihilation that would leave everyone, especially his high-priced lawyers, utterly speechless. The Thorne estate in Greenwich wasn't just a house. It was a testament, a sprawling colonial revival of white-painted brick and slate roofing. It sat on 4 acres of meticulously manicured land that rolled down to a private sliver of the Long Island Sound. Eleanor Thorne had designed the interiors herself, a symphony of high-end minimalism, all cool blues creams and brushed brass. It was serene expensive, and for the past 3 years felt as hollow as a drum. Eleanor and Marcus Thorne had been married for 22 years. They met at Yale. She was studying art history. He was a famously ambitious MBA candidate. Marcus was a force of nature, charming, ruthless, and possessing an energy that pulled everyone into his orbit. Elena, quieter and more analytical, had been his anchor. Her family money had provided the seed capital for his first venture, a boutique private equity firm, Thorne Capital. Now it managed assets in the 9-figure range. On paper they were perfect. They were the Adlers of their social set, a nod to their best friends, Julian and Chloe Adler, who lived 2 estates over. They hosted the right galas, sat on the right charity boards, and their now adult twin daughters Olivia and Sophia were both excelling at their respective Ivy League schools. But a perfect life is often the best place to hide an imperfect truth. The hollowness had started subtly. Marcus, always a hard worker, began working smarter, which paradoxically meant he was away more often. "Expanding the Boston portfolio, Elena," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "It's a delicate merger. I need to be there in person." At first it was 1 night a week, then 2, then sometimes 3. He'd come back smelling of different soap and a faint, unidentifiable exhaustion that was different from his usual work fatigue. He was less present even when he was home. He'd stand in their magnificent museum-like kitchen, scrolling through a phone she didn't recognize. "New phone?" she asked once, her voice casual, as she inspected a cut crystal vase. "Just for the Boston clients?" he'd replied, not looking up. "International numbers. Easier to keep it separate." Elena, who had co-managed their finances for 2 decades, who prided herself on her attention to detail, chose to believe him. To question it felt like pulling a thread that might unravel the entire tapestry of their life. She was 48. Their daughters were grown. This was supposed to be their time, the golden years before true retirement. The alternative, the one that whispered in her ear at 3 a.m., was simply too catastrophic to entertain. She focused instead on his company. Marcus had always been the face, but Elena had been the spine. She sat on the board, and while she'd stepped back from daily operations, she still reviewed all major expenditures and quarterly reports. Lately, she'd felt a prickle of unease there too. A new LLC had appeared on the books, Apex Property Group. It was listed as a holding company for a new commercial acquisition in Boston's Seaport District, but the numbers felt off. The capital outflows to Apex were substantial, yet the incoming revenue from the property was anemic, barely covering the debt service. "It's a long-term play, darling. Marcus had said, waving his hand dismissively when she'd brought it up. "We're renovating 2 floors. Pre-lease agreements are still in negotiation. Don't worry your pretty head about it. It's handled. Don't worry your pretty head." The phrase, once a term of endearment, now landed like a small, sharp slap. Elena poured herself a glass of Sancerre, the wine cold against her hand. She stood at the massive bay window, overlooking the Sound. The water was grey and choppy, matching her mood. She wasn't worried about the money. They had more than enough. She was worried about the secrecy. Marcus had never shielded her from a deal before. He'd always valued her insight, her ability to see the structural flaws he in his bullish optimism often missed. This new behavior, the separate phone, the delicate Boston merger, the dismissiveness, it wasn't just a husband pulling away. It felt like a businessman hiding a bad bet. And so Elena Thorne did something she had never done in her 22-year marriage. She decided to investigate her husband. But her target wasn't a mistress. It was his balance sheet. She wasn't hiring a private detective to catch a cheater. She was hiring a forensic accountant to find a financial hole. She picked up her phone and dialed the number for a man she'd been researching for a week, a quiet, terrifyingly thorough investigator named Thomas Harrison. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice steady and cool. "My name is Eleanor Thorne. I believe my husband is being defrauded by his new business partners. I need you to find out who is really behind Apex Property Group." It was a lie, of course. She suspected Marcus was behind it. But it was the first step. And as she hung up the phone, the setting sun glinted off the brass hardware in her perfect kitchen, making it look for a moment like the bars of a beautiful gilded cage. Thomas Harrison was not the kind of man you found in the Yellow Pages. He was a former SEC investigator who now ran a one-man corporate risk assessment firm from a nondescript office in Stamford. He was expensive, discreet, and pathologically thorough. He didn't find smoke. He found the match, the accelerant, and the fingerprint on the empty gas can. Elena met him in a private room at the Greenwich Country Club. He was a man of medium height, medium build, dressed in a forgettable grey suit. He listened, his eyes unblinking, as Elena laid out her concerns. "Apex Property Group," she explained, pushing a file across the table. "It's a drain. The cash flow is all one way out. Marcus claims it's a renovation, but the outflows aren't going to contractors. They're going into a secondary holding company, Seaport Holdings, and from there, it's a black box." "You suspect your husband is being embezzled?" Harrison asked, his voice flat. "I suspect," Elena said, choosing her words with precision, "that the financials are being deliberately obscured. I want to know who is on the other end of those payments. Who is Seaport Holdings?" "Understood," Harrison said. He closed the file. "I'll start with the public filings for Apex. I'll trace the incorporation of Seaport. I'll need a retainer and your complete discretion. You cannot mention this to your husband. If he is being defrauded, you'll tip him off to warn his partners. If he is the one—" Harrison let the sentence hang. "I understand," Elena said, her stomach tightening. "Do whatever is necessary." For 2 weeks, Elena lived on a knife's edge. She played the part of the supportive, semi-detached wife. She hosted a dinner party for Julian and Chloe Adler, smiling as Chloe lamented the rising cost of equestrian care. She discussed summer plans with her daughters on FaceTime, agreeing that yes, the Hamptons house needed a new pool filter. All the while, Marcus continued his routine. He left for Boston on a Tuesday, came back on a Thursday. When he returned, he seemed happier, lighter. "The deal is finally coming together," he announced, kissing her cheek. He smelled of fresh air and a cologne she didn't recognize. "It's going to be huge, Elena. bigger than the Oro 8 acquisition. His good mood was almost more painful than his secrecy. It felt like a celebration she wasn't invited to. The first report from Harrison arrived in a blank encrypted email. It was dry, just data. Apex Property Group was, as Marcus said, the owner of a commercial building in Boston. Seaport Holdings, however, was a shell corporation. Its address was a UPS store in Cambridge. Its sole signatory was a name Elena didn't recognize, Sophie M. Walsh. "A ghost," Harrison said on their check-in call. "No social media, no professional footprint. The name doesn't cross-reference with any of your husband's known associates. She's a cutout. The money stops with her. The next step would be physical surveillance of the property of your husband during his Boston trips. It's a different protocol, Mrs. Thorne. It gets, personal." Elena's hand trembled. Sophie M. Walsh. The name felt like a stone in her gut. A cutout. A proxy. Or something else. "His next trip is this Tuesday," Elena said, her voice a whisper. "He lands at Logan at 10 a.m. He'll be there for 2 days. I want to know where he goes. I want to know who he meets. I want to know who Sophie Walsh is." "As you wish," Harrison replied, his tone unchanged. The following Tuesday, Elena watched Marcus pack. He folded his suits with care, whistling a tune from a jazz station. "Big meeting today?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe of their vast walk-in closet. "The biggest," he said, zipping his Toomey bag. "Finalizing the tenant agreements. If this lands, we'll be the talk of the town." He smiled, and for a second he was the same man she'd fallen in love with. "Wish me luck." "Good luck, Marcus," she said, forcing a smile. The moment his car cleared the long gravel driveway, Elena's composure shattered. She sat on their perfectly made bed, the 800 thread count sheets suddenly feeling like sandpaper. The waiting was a physical torment. Harrison didn't call. He worked. On Thursday evening, an hour before Marcus was due home, the email arrived. The subject line was simply, "Update TH." It was not a financial report. It was a single password-protected PDF. Elena's fingers fumbled as she typed the code they had agreed upon. The document opened. It wasn't spreadsheets or bank records. It was a surveillance report complete with photographs. The first photo was of Marcus exiting a terminal at Logan Airport. The second was of him getting into a black Uber. The third was of the Uber parked not in Boston's financial district, but on a quiet, tree-lined street in Brookline. The fourth photo was of Marcus, bag in hand, walking up to a charming brownstone. The fifth photo made the world stop. He was on the steps of the brownstone, and he was kissing a woman. Not a peck on the cheek. A deep, lingering kiss. A welcome-home kiss. The woman was attractive with dark, curly hair, maybe in her late 30s. Elena scrolled down, her breath caught in her throat. The next photo was taken an hour later from a distance. It was Marcus, the woman, and a young boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, walking down the street. They were laughing. Marcus had his arm around the woman, and his other hand was on the boy's shoulder. They looked for all the world like a family. Harrison's text was clinical. Subject Marcus Thorne. Arrived 10:15 a.m. Traveled to 142 Amory Street, Brookline. Property is a residential condominium. Primary associate female identified as Sophie M. Walsh. Age 39. Registered owner of the property, purchased 11 years ago. Minor male, identified as Leo Walsh. Age 10. Enrolled at the Park School. Marcus Thorne is listed on school emergency contact forms. Summary. Subject did not visit the Apex Property building. He spent 48 hours at the Amory Street residence. Attached are financials. The property at 142 Amory Street was purchased via a trust linked to the Seaport Holdings LLC. School tuition for Leo Walsh has been paid for 5 years from the same account. Please advise on next steps. Elena stared at the screen. The room was spinning. The words blurred. 11 years. Age 10. Marcus Thorne is listed on school emergency contact forms. It wasn't a bad business deal. It wasn't an embezzlement partner. It was a second life. A second home. A second woman. It was a child. His child. The sound of gravel crunching in the driveway announced Marcus's return. Elena closed the laptop, her movements robotic. She stood up, walked into their enormous marble bathroom, and was violently, silently sick. She washed her face, rinsed her mouth, and looked at her reflection. The woman staring back was a stranger, a pale, hollow-eyed ghost. She heard him enter the house, his voice booming. "Elena, I'm home. You won't believe the day I had." She smoothed her hair, straightened her silk blouse, and walked out of the bathroom. The mask was back in place, but it was no longer made of glass. It was forged from ice. Grief was a hot, searing pain, but what she felt now was something else. It was cold. It was precise. It was the chilling, calculating calm of total, absolute rage. Marcus thought he was a master of the universe. He had just made the gravest mistake of his life. He hadn't just betrayed his wife. He had betrayed his business partner. And this partner was about to liquidate his entire world. For 1 month, Elena Thorne lived a life of staggering duplicity. She was the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, and in secret, the perfect executioner. She smiled at Marcus's jokes, feigned interest in his Boston deal, and even slept beside him in their sprawling, king-sized bed. Her body rigid with a disgust so profound it felt like a physical illness. Every Boston trip he took was now a fresh stab of betrayal. But it was also a window of opportunity. The moment his car left her war room assembled, she didn't just have Thomas Harrison anymore. She had Diana Vane. Diana was the most feared divorce attorney in New York, a woman known for eviscerating her word hubristic husbands. She was a shark in a $5,000 Armani suit, and when Elena laid out the file, the photos the LLC's. The 11 years of diverted funds. Diana's smile was thin and dangerous. "Oh, he didn't just cheat Mrs. Thorne," Diana said, tapping a red-lacquered nail on the photo of Marcus and Leo. "He stole. This is fraud. Commingling of marital assets, fraudulent conveyance. This is a feast. He didn't just give you a reason for divorce. He gave you the weapon, the ammunition, and the target." "I don't just want a divorce, Diana," Elena said, her voice low. "I want to dismantle him. He used our money, the company I helped build, to fund a lie. He put our entire estate at risk with his recklessness. Then we don't file on grounds of infidelity." Diana said, her eyes gleaming. "That's messy and emotional. We file on financial malfeasance. We go after the company. We prove he used corporate assets for personal gain, voiding his share of the partnership agreement. We argue that Thorne Capital is in fact insolvent due to his liabilities, namely 11 years of child support and damages he owes this Sophie Walsh." Elena paused. "What about her, Sophie Walsh? Who is she? A willing participant?" "Unlikely," Diana mused. Men like Marcus don't build this kind of elaborate lie with a partner. They build it around them. He's likely told her a completely different story. She probably thinks you are the distant ex-wife or a business partner from a lavender marriage. She is as much a victim as you are. A new daring and terrifying idea began to form in Eleanor's mind. Find her, Diana. Not through Harrison. I want you to find her. I want to know her story. Does she have a lawyer? She will, Diana said. But you want to talk to her. I want to meet her, Elena said. If he's built a cage for her too, I want to hand her the key. It took Diana's team 3 days. Sophie Walsh was not a ghost. She was just private. She was a former art curator who had left her job at a Boston gallery 10 years ago, just after her son Leo was born. She lived a quiet, upper-middle-class life, funded entirely by the investment returns from a trust Marcus had set up for her, the trust Elena knew that was just a pipeline from Thorn Capital's operating account. Elena scheduled her own trip to Boston. She told Marcus she was visiting an old college roommate in Beacon Hill. He thought it was a wonderful idea. Take my driver, he'd offered. No, she'd said, I'll take the train. I want the quiet time. The meeting was set at a neutral location, the private library of the Boston Athenaeum. Elena arrived first. The scent of old books and lemon oil polish a stark contrast to the acid in her stomach. Sophie Walsh entered at 2 p.m. sharp. She was softer than she looked in the surveillance photos, with kind, intelligent eyes that were etched with a deep, consuming anxiety. She clutched her handbag as if it were a life raft. She clearly had no idea why a high-powered New York lawyer had requested an urgent financial consultation. Elena stood up. Ms. Walsh, thank you for coming. I am Eleanor Thorn. Sophie's face registered nothing. The name meant nothing to her. She smiled politely. It's a pleasure to meet you. Your lawyer was very mysterious. How can I help you? Elena didn't sit. She walked to the window overlooking the granary burying ground. This is going to be difficult, Ms. Walsh, so I will be direct. We have a man in common. Sophie's polite smile faltered. I don't understand. Marcus Thorn, Elena said. Sophie's confusion deepened. Marcus? How do you know Marcus? I've known him for 25 years, Elena said, turning to face her. I am his wife. The color drained from Sophie's face. She visibly swayed, grabbing the back of a leather chair. No, that's not possible. His wife, Elena, she died years ago. A car accident. He told me. The air left Elena's lungs. It wasn't a car accident. It was a character assassination. He hadn't just hidden her. He had killed her. He lied, Elena said, her voice surprisingly gentle. I am very much alive. We have been married for 22 years. We have 2 daughters. We live in Greenwich, Connecticut. Sophie sank into the chair, her hands covering her mouth. The sound she made was a strangled sob of pure, undiluted horror. No. We've been together for 12 years. He's Leo's father. I know, Elena said. She sat opposite her. I have the school enrollment forms. I have the wire transfers from my husband's company that pay your mortgage and Leo's tuition, the company we own together. Sophie looked up, her eyes wide with terror and dawning realization. The trust. He said it was from his family's inheritance. He said his parents left it for him. But he couldn't touch the principal. Oh my God. He told me. He said we couldn't get married until his business was disentangled from his first wife's dead estate. That it was complicated. It is complicated, Elena agreed, but not in the way he told you. For the next hour, the two women, the wife and the mistress, the society queen, and the secret family, pieced together the staggering architecture of Marcus's deceit. He had used Elena's money and name to build his business, and he had used that business to fund a fantasy life with Sophie. He had 2 homes, 2 calendars, 2 lives running in perfect, monstrous parallel. Sophie's grief was raw and explosive. He's a monster, a sociopath. He read Leo bedtime stories last night. He helped him with his science project. How? Elena's grief, by contrast, had crystallized into something much harder. He's a narcissist, Sophie, and he's a thief. He stole your life, your chance at a real relationship, and he stole my money and my trust to do it. Sophie's tears began to subside, replaced by the same cold fire Elena felt. What do you want from me? You're going to sue him. You're going to expose him. We are, Elena said. Sophie blinked. Elena leaned forward. Marcus thinks he's fighting one scorned wife. He thinks he can buy me off with half of an estate he's already secretly drained. He's not prepared for 2 women. He's not prepared for you. You, Ms. Walsh, are not just his mistress. You are his single largest unsecured creditor. I don't have money for a lawyer like you, Sophie whispered. You don't need one, Elena said. My lawyer, Diana Vane, has already reviewed your case. Marcus has committed multiple counts of fraud against you. He has exposed you to incredible financial and legal risk. He has established a pattern of behavior. Diana is prepared to represent you pro bono in a separate suit. A separate suit. Yes, we are not friends, Ms. Walsh. We are allies. You will file a suit for palimony, fraudulent misrepresentation, and sole custody and child support for Leo. I will file for divorce on the grounds of financial malfeasance. Our suits will be filed on the same day. Our claims will be linked. Elena laid out the plan. It was brilliant. It was brutal. It was total. Sophie looked at Elena, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a rival, but as a fellow victim, and a terrifyingly competent one. He's not just going to lose his money, is he? Sophie said. Elena stood up and smoothed her skirt. Money is just a symptom, Sophie. We're going to take his company. We're going to take his reputation. We're going to take his name. By the time we are done, the only thing Marcus Thorne will have left is the Toomey bag he carries between our 2 houses. Sophie Walsh, the curator, the mother, the 12-year victim, stood up and nodded. Show me where to sign. The serving of the papers was a masterpiece of coordinated shock. On a Tuesday morning, Marcus Thorne was in his glass-walled corner office at Thorne Capital, closing what he believed was the deal of a lifetime. He had just secured a new line of credit against the company's assets he planned to leverage further for his Boston portfolio, which was in reality a new, much larger home he'd promised to buy for Sophie and Leo. At 10:00 a.m., a process server walked into the gleaming lobby of his Stamford office and served him with Elena's divorce petition. At 10:01 a.m., his high-powered corporate lawyer, Alan Jacoby, received a courtesy copy. At 10:05 a.m., a second process server walked into the same lobby and served Marcus Thorne with a second lawsuit. Sophie M. Walsh vs. Marcus A. Thorne, citing fraud, misrepresentation, and a petition for emergency custody and child support. Marcus's world collapsed in the span of 5 minutes. His first call naturally was to Eleanor. She was in her garden calmly pruning roses when the phone rang. She let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. His text messages, which she read with detached interest, were a perfect timeline of narcissistic rage. Eleanor. What is this call me? This is a mistake. 10:08 a.m. Pick up the phone. Your lawyer is insane. Financial malfeasance. 10:15 a.m. Who the hell is Sophie Walsh, and why is she suing me? 10:22 a.m. Eleanor. This is sabotage. You are destroying the company. Call me now. 10:30 a.m. Answer me. Answer me, you cold butch. 10:45 a.m. She finally picked up at noon, her voice as smooth as cream. Marcus, you seem upset. Upset, upset, you've ruined me, he screamed into the phone. Who is this woman? You've conspired with some lunatic to extort me. I'll have you both arrested. You know exactly who she is, Marcus, Elena said calmly. She's the mother of your 10-year-old son, Leo. She's the woman you've been living with in the Brookline condo I paid for. Ringing any bells? There was a dead, suffocating silence on the other end. He had until that second believed he could contain the damage. He believed he could lie his way out, that Sophie would never find out that Eleanor only knew about some financial issues. The realization that the two worlds had collided and allied struck him mute. You, he stammered. Yes, me, Elena said. Now I'm hanging up. My lawyer, Diana Vane, will be handling all further communication. Do not contact me again. Do not come to the Greenwich house. I've had the locks changed and the security code. Your things are with your lawyer. She hung up. The next few weeks were a flurry of legal activity. Marcus Reeling hired Alan Jacoby, a slick corporate brawler, to handle the divorce. He hired a separate bulldog-like family law attorney to handle the Sophie situation. His strategy was clear paint, Eleanor as a vindictive, scorned wife, and Sophie as a delusional, gold-digging mistress. It was a fatal miscalculation. Marcus's lawyers tried to bury them in paperwork. They filed motions to dismiss, motions to sever the two cases, motions to seal the proceedings. Diana Vane and Sophie's new lawyer, hand-picked and paid for by a litigation trust Elena had funded, met every motion with a precise, crushing counter-motion. They didn't just have accusations. They had receipts, 11 years of them. They had the wire transfers from Thorne Capital to Seaport Holdings. They had the mortgage statements for the Brookline condo signed by Marcus. They had the Park School enrollment forms listing Marcus Thorne, father. They had geotagged photos from Harrison, placing Marcus at school plays, father-son picnics, and weekend trips to Vermont with Sophie and Leo. They had credit card statements for a black Amex in Marcus's name, a card Elena never knew existed that paid for jewelry dinners at Boston's finest restaurants and a couple's vacation to Bermuda. Marcus's legal team, seeing the mountain of evidence, quickly shifted tactics. The bluster vanished, replaced by a sullen, desperate attempt to settle. This is getting ugly, Alan Jacoby said in a four-way call with Diana. My client is prepared to be generous. He will give Mrs. Thorne the Greenwich house free and clear. He'll offer her 50% of his liquid assets. As for Ms. Walsh, He is prepared to set up a reasonable child support trust. This all goes away. No public humiliation, no fuss. Diana Vane put the call on mute and laughed. "He thinks he's negotiating," she said to Elena, who was sitting in her office. She unmuted the call. "Alan, let me be clear. Your client is not in a position to offer anything. He is a man facing at least 2 civil fraud suits, and if we're feeling ambitious, a RACO complaint. 50%. We aren't asking for 50%, we are taking 100. That's absurd. The company is his. His name is on the door, and his mistress is on the payroll funded by fraudulent conveyances, which by my reading of the corporate charter, Mrs. Thorne helped write voids his partnership stake entirely. He has systematically devalued the marital estate to fund a secret life. We are not splitting the estate. We are reclaiming stolen property. The Greenwich house is already hers. The company is hers. The Hamptons house is hers. And my client, Jacoby sputtered. What does he get? He gets to keep his frequent flyer miles, Diana said. And he gets to negotiate with Ms. Walsh for visitation, which, given his pattern of deceit, we will be recommending be supervised. My client will see you at the mediation. Have a nice day. She hung up the click, echoing in the silent room. Elena felt a grim satisfaction, but the trap wasn't fully sprung. The mediation was the final piece. Marcus still believed he had leverage. He believed Elena was bluffing, that she wouldn't dare destroy the company she relied on for her own lifestyle. He's an arrogant fool, Elena told Diana. He thinks I'm like him. He thinks I'm motivated by greed. He doesn't understand that I would burn this entire company to the ground just to watch him choke on the ashes. We won't have to, Diana said, pulling a new file from her briefcase. Harrison found something else. The final nail. Elena looked at her. What? The new line of credit. The one he took out the day you served him. He leveraged all of Thorne Capital's remaining unencumbered assets. He did it without a board vote, which is a direct violation of the bylaws. Why? Elena asked. He was trying to move the money. He wired the entire $15 million loan to an offshore account in the Caymans. He was planning to drain the company and flee. Elena's blood ran cold. He would have left her with a bankrupt company and left Sophie and his son with nothing. He tried to transfer it, Diana said, but I anticipated it. The moment you filed, I put a temporary restraining order on all corporate accounts. The $15 million is frozen. The bank has flagged him for fraud. Alan Jacoby doesn't even know about this yet. Marcus didn't just commit civil fraud, Elena. He just committed a federal crime. The trap was no longer just a legal one. It was a criminal one. The mediation is in 2 days, Elena said. He's going to walk into that room thinking he can negotiate. He has no idea he's walking into his own execution. The social fallout was as immediate as it was brutal. Greenwich society feeds on scandal, but it abhors messes. The simultaneous lawsuits were a cannonball in a koi pond. Their best friends, Julian and Chloe Adler, were the first to react. Chloe, whose primary concern was social standing, called Eleanor in a breathless whisper. "Eleanor, darling, I'm hearing things, utterly dreadful things. That Marcus, that there's another woman, and you've locked him out." Elena was in her home gym midway through a punishing session on the Peloton. She muted the instructor. "Hello, Chloe." "Yes, it's all true." "My God," Chloe gasped. "A common affair. How tawdry." "Well, you're better off, of course. Julian and I are firmly on your side. We're having a small get-together on Friday. Just close friends. You must come." You can't let him see you hiding." Elena smiled, a cold, humorless expression. "Thank you, Chloe. That's very loyal of you." "Of course, darling. We're Team Elena. Always." 2 days later, Elena saw Julian Adler's car parked outside Alan Jacoby's law office. And that night at the supportive dinner party, Julian, after 2 martinis, put his hand on Elena's arm. "Elena," he said, his voice thick with false sincerity. "I've spoken to Marcus. He's a broken man, utterly destroyed. He made a terrible mistake, yes. But this legal war, it's going to destroy the company, our company." Elena's eyes sharpened. Julian wasn't just a friend. He was a significant minority investor in Thorn Capital. "What are you saying, Julian?" "I'm saying," he leaned in, "that you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're the one who's going to end up with 50% of nothing. Jacoby says Marcus is willing to give you 60% of the liquid assets and the house if you drop this financial malfeasance claim and let him keep the company. It's a good deal, Elena. Take the win. Don't let your emotions and that barracuda lawyer of yours cloud your judgment." The betrayal was so blatant, so self-serving, it was almost comical. He wasn't Team Elena. He was Team Julian's investment. He was Marcus's little messenger, sent to pressure her into taking a deal that would save Marcus and Julian's portfolio from ruin. Elena slowly removed his hand from her arm. "Julian," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper that made him lean in closer. "Thank you for your concern. It means so much." She smiled, a brilliant, dazzling smile. "You tell Marcus his offer is intriguing. You tell him I'm tired of fighting. I'm exhausted. I just want this to be over. I'll consider it." Julian beamed, believing he had succeeded. "That's my girl. I knew you'd see reason." Elena watched him walk away, preening back to Chloe. She picked up her clutch, walked out of the Adler's house without saying goodbye, and got into her car. The mask was cracking. Not from grief, but from a profound, isolating contempt for the entire world she had inhabited. They were all vultures dressed in designer clothes. She drove not home, but to the Stamford offices of Diana Vane. It was 10 p.m. Diana was still there. "They're panicking," Elena said, throwing her Chanel bag onto a chair. "Marcus sent Julian Adler to me tonight. They're trying to get me to back down. They're offering 60%. Diana looked up from a mountain of paperwork. "He's desperate. The TRO on that $15 million loan is killing him. The bank is calling his loan, and he can't access the money he stole to pay it. He's trapped. He's trying to put our friendship against me," Elena spat. "He thinks I'm a weak, emotional woman who will just fold." "Then let's use that," Diana said, a slow smile spreading. "You considered his offer. Now you counter. You'll agree to the mediation. You'll agree to discuss a settlement. You'll seem reasonable. You will walk into that room tomorrow looking like the broken, tired wife who just wants out." "And then?" Elena asked. "And then," Diana said, gesturing to a stack of 3 thick bound documents on her desk, "we introduce evidence. We will let him and his shark, Mr. Jacoby, lay out their entire generous offer. We will let him lie on the record to the mediator. We will let him commit perjury." Diana tapped the first binder. "This is Exhibit A, the financials. Every fraudulent wire transfer, every hidden account, every cent he stole." She tapped the second. "Exhibit B, the second life. Every photo of Sophie and Leo, the school records, the vacation itineraries, proof of his 11-year lie." She then tapped the third, much slimmer, but somehow heavier binder. "And this," she said, "is Exhibit C, the criminal intent. This is the wire transfer request for $15 million to the Cayman Islands. This is the proof of the federal bank fraud. This is the one that sends him to prison." Diana smiled. "He thinks he's coming to a divorce mediation, Eleanor. He's actually coming to his own arraignment. He's just the only one in the room who won't know it." Elena looked at the three binders. The annihilation, the betrayal, and the execution. "Tomorrow," Elena said, "I want him to see me. But I also want him to see her." Diana raised an eyebrow. "Sophie, are you sure that's a high-risk play? It could be emotional." "It won't be," Elena said. "He needs to see in one room the two lives he thought he was so clever to keep apart. He needs to be confronted by the full scope of his destruction. I want Sophie Walsh sitting right next to me. I want him to look at his wife and his mistress, and I want him to know definitively that they are united, and that he has absolutely nowhere left to run." The conference room on the 40th floor of a downtown Stamford skyscraper was sterile, silent, and pressurized with unspoken animosity. A massive, polished mahogany table reflected the grey, overcast sky. Marcus Thorne and his lawyer, Alan Jacoby, were already seated. Marcus looked terrible. He was pale, his suit hung loosely on him, and his usual charismatic swagger was replaced by a sullen, twitchy energy. He was a man drowning in debt and facing a public relations nightmare. But he was still arrogant. He still believed he held the cards. He believed Elena was at her core a socialite who would fold to avoid a public, messy trial. He believed Julian Adler had talked sense into her. The plan was simple. Jacoby would offer the generous 60-40 split. Marcus would offer a mea culpa about his mistake, Sophie, and a reasonable trust for the child, Leo. They would strong-arm Elena, paint her lawyer as a greedy shark, and settle this before the frozen $15 million loan defaulted and the bank came for him. The door opened. Elena Thorne walked in. She was not the broken, tired wife. She was a vision of cold power. She wore a severe, dark navy sheath dress, her hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. She looked like a CEO arriving for a hostile takeover. With her was Diana Vane carrying a briefcase, and right behind her, walking with a straight-backed, nervous but resolute dignity, was Sophie Walsh. Marcus Thorne's jaw literally dropped. He half rose from his chair. What is she doing here? This is a private mediation." "She was invited," Diana Vane said, her voice clipping the air, "as a material witness to the financial dissipation of the marital estate. Please sit down, Marcus." Alan Jacoby, blindsided, recovered first. "This is highly irregular. Her claims are a separate matter. We are here to discuss the Thorne divorce." "And so we shall," said the mediator, a retired judge named Eileen Grant, who had been thoroughly pre-briefed by Diana. "Ms. Walsh is here as an observer for now. Mr. Jacoby, please begin." Jacoby shuffled his papers. He launched into his pre-rehearsed speech. "Judge Grant, Mrs. Thorne, we are all here to find an amicable solution. My client has made a profound personal error, one he deeply regrets." Marcus, on cue, looked at Elena with what he clearly thought was a look of pained remorse. "Elena, I am so sorry for the pain I caused. I was lost." Elena met his gaze. Her expression was utterly blank, as if she were looking at a stranger who had asked her for directions. She didn't say a word. Jacoby continued. "He wants to make this right. He is offering Mrs. Thorne the Greenwich estate unencumbered. He is offering her 60% of their liquid assets. In exchange, we ask that the financial malfeasance claims be dropped, the company be left in Mr. Thorne's sole control, and the other matter," he gestured vaguely at Sophie, "be handled with discretion." The mediator nodded. "A 60-40 split. Ms. Vane." Diana Vane smiled. "Thank you, Your Honor. My client rejects that offer. In fact, we find it insulting. Mr. Jacoby seems to be under the impression that we are here to split an estate. We are not. We are here to recover stolen assets." She stood and placed the first thick binder on the table. Exhibit A, the financials. This details years of fraudulent transfers from Thorne Capital, a marital asset, to a shell corporation, Seaport Holdings. The total sum with interest is $14.2 million. This money was used to purchase a $3 million condo in Brookline, pay for 11 years of living expenses, and fund a decade of tuition at the Park School. Jacoby paled. Those were investments. The Boston portfolio. "Oh," Diana said, opening the second binder. Exhibit B, the Boston portfolio. This is a photo of the portfolio. His name is Leo Walsh. He is 10 years old. She slid a photo across the table. It was Marcus, Sophie, and Leo at Leo's 10th birthday party, blowing out candles on a cake. Marcus was smiling, wearing a world's best dad party hat. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "This is a disgrace. You will not drag my son into this." Sophie Walsh spoke for the first time, her voice shaking, but clear. "He is my son, and you dragged him into this when you lied to him for his entire life, when you told him his step-sisters were just Daddy's business partner's kids, when you told me his wife was dead." Jacoby's head snapped toward his client. "You told her what?" Marcus was sputtering, his face a blotchy red. "She's lying. She's a delusional gold digger." "Am I?" Sophie shot back. "Then what about the Bermuda trip, Marcus, the one you told Elena was a banking conference in Zurich, or the diamond necklace you bought me for our anniversary, the one you put on the corporate card as client entertainment?" "This is irrelevant," Jacoby shouted. "His personal life is not—" "It is relevant," Diana Vane cut in, "when he used marital assets to fund it. Which brings us to our demand. We are not asking for 60%. We are taking 90%. Mrs. Thorne will take the Greenwich house, the Hamptons house, and 100% of Thorne Capital." Jacoby burst out laughing, a desperate, hysterical laugh. "You can't be serious. You'll get 50% and you'll be lucky. If you push this, we'll drag this out for years. We'll countersue for defamation. You'll do nothing," Diana said, her voice dropping. She placed the third, slimmer binder on the table. "Because if you do not accept our offer in the next 10 minutes, I will pick up my phone and I will call the U.S. Attorney's Office. Exhibit C, criminal intent." She opened it. "This Mr. Jacoby is a copy of a wire transfer request for $15 million, signed by your client, routed to an account in the Cayman Islands. It was an attempt to fraudulently liquidate the company's primary asset, a loan he took out without a board vote to evade his creditors, namely my clients. This isn't just a messy divorce, gentlemen. This is bank fraud. This is racketeering. This is a 10 to 20-year prison sentence." The room went utterly silent. Alan Jacoby stared at the wire transfer request. He looked at Marcus. You idiot!" Marcus Thorne finally broke. The arrogance, the bluster, the charm, it all evaporated. He slumped in his chair, a hollowed-out man. He was trapped. He was in a word finished. What do you want? He whispered, looking at Elena. Elena Thorne leaned forward for the first time, her eyes boring into his. I want you to admit it. On the record. All of it. Elena. Please. Say it. Say I stole the money. Say I lied to Sophie. Say I have a son named Leo. Say I tried to flee the country. He looked at his lawyer, who just stared blankly at the table, his own career flashing before his eyes. Say it, Marcus, Elena commanded. And in a small, pathetic voice, Marcus Thorne, the titan of private equity, the master of the universe, confessed. I stole the money. I lied. I have a son. I tried to move the funds. Elena leaned back, a small, cold sigh of satisfaction. Good. Now you will sign. You will sign over 100% of your shares in Thorne Capital to me. You will sign over the houses. You will sign over your retirement accounts. In exchange, Mrs. Thorne and Ms. Walsh will agree not to press criminal charges. I'll have nothing, Marcus whispered, tears of self-pity welling in his eyes. You'll have your freedom, Diana Vane countered, which is more than you deserve. And Ms. Walsh's suit. You will sign over the Brookline condo to her free and clear, and you will agree to the child support terms her lawyer has drafted, which will be funded by the personal accounts you thought you'd hidden. It wasn't a mediation. It was a surrender. Marcus cornered and broken-signed every single document. He signed away his company, his homes, his money, and his past. The true revenge, Elena realized, wasn't just in taking his money. It was in the way she did it. She had used his own arrogance, his own lies, and his own greed as the weapons. She hadn't just divorced him. She had forensically, systematically, and legally erased him. The shockwave from that mediation room was immediate. Marcus Thorne was out. The company name was changed within a week. Thorne Capital became Apex Holdings, a quiet nod to the very lie that had started it all, now reclaimed by Eleanor. Julian and Chloe Adler, upon hearing that Marcus was not only broke but had been criminally compromised, distanced themselves so fast it was comical. Chloe sent Elena a 3-tiered flower arrangement with a card that read, "We always knew he was no good for you. We stand with you, darling." Eleanor had her assistant donate it to a nursing home. Marcus's ruin was total. He was a social and financial pariah. Stripped of his company and his homes, he was left with a leased Audi, a mountain of personal legal debt, and a reputation so toxic he couldn't get a meeting with a dog walker. He was last seen moving into a small, furnished apartment in White Plains, paid for by what was left of a trust fund from his parents. His relationship with Sophie and Leo was even more devastating. The court, based on his pattern of fraudulent deceit, granted Sophie's request. Marcus was allowed to see his son, but only on supervised visits at a state-approved facility. Leo, confused and hurt, refused to see him. The world's best dad had been exposed as a phantom. Elena's life, by contrast, was remade. She didn't burn the company down. She ran it. She stepped in as CEO of Apex Holdings, liquidating the toxic assets Marcus had acquired, stabilizing the portfolio, and reassuring her investors minus Julian Adler, whom she'd bought out at a humiliatingly low price. She found she was better at the job than Marcus had ever been. She was precise, she was strategic, and she was, for the first time in 22 years, completely and totally free. She sold the Greenwich estate. It held too many ghosts. She kept the Hamptons house, but she had it redecorated from top to bottom, erasing every trace of her old life. About a month after the mediation, She was in Boston, finalizing the transfer of the Brookline condo's title. She met Sophie Walsh at a small cafe to sign the final papers. The two women sat across from each other, an awkward but profound silence between them. They would never be friends. The chasm of their shared trauma was too wide. But they were two soldiers who had survived the same war. "The condo is in your name now," Elena said, sliding a folder across the table. "The trust for Leo is fully funded. You'll never have to worry about him." Sophie looked at the papers, her hands steady. Marcus. He tried to call Leo. From a blocked number. He told him that I was lying and that you were a witch who stole his money." Elena sighed. "Narcissists never believe they've lost. They just believe they've been wronged." "My son is in therapy," Sophie said, her voice tight. We're processing. But we will be okay. Because of you." She looked up, her eyes clear. "You didn't have to include me. You could have just taken him down yourself. You saved us." "He used my money to trap you, Sophie," Elena said. "That made you my responsibility, or at least my liability. We both deserve to be free of him." Sophie nodded. She stood up, and Eleanor stood with her. In a gesture that surprised them both, Sophie reached out and briefly squeezed Elena's arm. "I hope you find peace, Elena." "You too, Sophie," Elena replied. Elena watched her walk away, a mother heading home to her son. Her life finally her own. Elena turned and walked the other way toward the train station. She was a CEO, a single woman, and the sole architect of her own future. The revenge wasn't just the asset split. The revenge was the truth. It was the fact that Marcus Thorne's whole life had been a house of cards, and Eleanor had simply calmly, with the help of another woman he'd underestimated, pulled the one card that made it all fall down. She didn't just shock everyone. She had shocked herself. She had found in the ruins of her perfect marriage a strength she never knew she possessed. And it was worth more than $20 million. In the end, Marcus Thorne's greatest mistake wasn't just the betrayal. It was underestimating the two women he betrayed. Elena's story is a chilling reminder that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous one to cross. She didn't just walk away with her share. She reclaimed her life by exposing every last lie, piece by piece, and forming an alliance he never saw coming. What do you think of Elena's ultimate revenge? Was it pure, cold justice, or was it a step too far? And what about her alliance with Sophie? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of complex drama and shocking real-life justice, make sure to like this video, share it with a friend who loves a good revenge story, and subscribe for more incredible stories every single week. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update.